if I walked away from my normal life, I would feel like I was giving up, right?
Mm.
And what you have to remember about me personally is that I've done nothing but the things I've wanted to do my whole life, right? I've never worked a job that I hated. I shouldn't say that when I was younger, probably in my teens, but for the most part, the majority of my life, I've done things that I love to do. And I love to just kind of surround myself with animals and be positive and travel. I have traveled the world. I've been all over the world, doing amazing animal adventures and seeing sights and being in places that are amazing. And so I've lived a really good life, much bigger, much more insane life than almost anybody that I know. But my son said this. His name is Noah, and he said, Dad, I don't want the adventure to stop. He said, you're the leader of that adventure. He
Yeah.
said, you always know the contact to get a hold of, to do this and to do that. And everywhere we go, we do something super amazing and super impressive. And he's like, I don't want that. And so that's another purpose, right? It's like, now I told him that, over the next 12 to 18 months, I want to go through every contact I have and share not only with him, like the contact, but what that contact can do, whether it's a guy in, Accra, Ghana, at West Africa or South America or Australia. I want him to be able to keep that, that going. And the idea would be to if the worst happens and I'm not here, is for him to take over the vlog and for him to travel and adventure and learn the things that I've learned my whole life and live that. I don't want him to live in my shadow. He came to me with it. He was like, I want to do this, and I said, of course, and it was emotional because he said, I want to do it with you. And of course, I said, that may not be able to happen, but we can make sure that we're going to set that up for you so that you can do it. And maybe my wife as well, like maybe the two of them can adventure around the world and do amazing things and vlog and do all that type of stuff. And so, yeah, so that's, so purpose is important for me. And I talked to some other survivors. Now, granted, I know that, other survivors of maybe other more, beatable cancers are a little bit different, but they told me, like, try to live as normal as you can for as long as you can, and I listen, I thought a lot about it, like, obviously I'm going to be tethered with treatment of, every 2 weeks and maybe part of those weeks. But I hope, I've told Lori this, like, let's say I tolerate really well and a week, every other week, I feel good and it's predictable. That doesn't mean that we can't split for a week, you know what I mean? And go do something amazing and knowing that, hey, good chances are I'm going to feel good for this week. So let's go ahead and have that plan and let's go do some things. Do I think I'm going to be flying to Australia? Probably not. But I can still do a lot of other adventures that are really great that we can do in the meantime. That'll be great. So, but yeah, I mean, and then there's another thing about, let's say, vlogging every day. And like you said, some days are not going to have a mention of cancer. Other days we'll talk about where we're at with it. But I think that there's also, I've been so blessed with millions and millions of followers that I feel like it would be a wasted opportunity for me to not use my platform to help others. Right. You know what I mean? Because this is the thing. I'm blessed, right? I'm blessed beyond belief. I've got a great family. I've got a great crew. I've got a great support staff. I've got millions and millions of people that follow me. And it's unbelievable, the outpouring of love I get every single day. There are people, and I've come across a couple of them over the last month, that are fighting these battles alone, and I can't imagine that battle that I'm facing now and having nobody, so I've been, does it suck? Yes. But man, could it be worse?
Sure.
It could be worse. And so for me, if I can bring a little, a little bit of light, a little ray of light or a little ray of hope to those people that are fighting alone, then I've got to do it. I've got to do it. It's another purpose. It's another part to finish my legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. On that point, you've got, you call it a reptarium that you have currently, right? But you're part of this legacy, and I mean, this is the part where it's like, wow, that's such a project, right? But you're committed to this as part of your legacy. Is I guess a larger or a more advanced, a full reptarium that you're building in Michigan.
So yeah, so we have it's called the Reptarium in Utica, Michigan. It's about 6,000 square foot reptiles, and it's a very unique place because it's very hands-on. It's very hands-on, and so when kids and families come in, they can hold giant snakes, they can hold alligators, they can hold lizards, they can feed stuff. It's like nothing. We created something that was no one had ever created before, right? Like there are a handful of reptile zoos in the country, but all the stuff is behind the glass. Our stuff, it all comes out, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of animals, and almost all of them can come out. So when a family comes in, and I know you're going, oh,
I'm spooked. I'm like, no, they shouldn't come out. They should be behind many, many layers of glass.
Yeah, well, we like it the other way, and but it's and not only do we take stuff out with our animal educators, but even like when a family comes in and they say, hey, can I see that? We pull it out. So wow. It's like per request too. Like, it's not just like, hey, there's an animal out you can play with. It's like, hey, can I check that out? Can I check this out? Sure. Yeah. And but the bigger dream was always, once we opened up this place, which was 4.5 years ago, and it's been wildly successful. We sell only so many tickets per week. And we're almost always sold out. I mean, like, wow. 45 of the 52 weeks of the year were sold out. And then the other few weeks were 80 to 90% sold out. So the dream was always to go bigger, right? And what I really want to do, so you got to remember, my mission is to get people like you, Jamie, to love reptiles. That's my mission in life. And that's the only mission I've really ever had, right? In all the things I've done, it's always been the mission is to get people through my passion to love animals. And if people see how passionate I am about it, they may love them as well, and that's what's important to me. But so I've always been a fish guy as well, right? So I love fish. And so the dream was always like, hey, let's open up a public aquarium that has a reptile zoo as well. So we all know that probably there's 10 times the amount of people that will go to a public aquarium than there is a reptile zoo. So just by chance, the building across the street from us, directly across the street from us, used to be a supermarket, and then it went to like a Salvation Army for the last 10 years. I would never forget, this goes back about 6 months from now. I was standing Saturday night, open to the public, standing in my front area, and I saw across the street them put up a sign, "We're moving." And from that moment, I was like, literally the next morning, I got on the phone call and I started tracking down who owned this building. And ultimately, a few days later, I couldn't find the guy. And I called the mayor of the city up, who is friends of mine. The city is great. The mayor and the council and everybody is so supportive of us because we bring a lot of tourism into their city, and they love us. So I called him up and he was like, yep, I know the owner. Let me get you his number. I called him. His name is John. The next day he was here. He came to visit me, and literally we made a deal over the next, few weeks. It was a done deal, and I took over. So the entire build for this aquarium is about $5 million, right? Wow. So I've brought on a partner that is going to be 10% owner of the company, that is going to do the filtration. That would cost about $1 million, right? So it's about $1 million to do the filtration. Because he owns a company that does it, he's going to do it. He's going to cover the cost of all the materials. And then, of course, the labor and everything else he's going to absorb as well. And so that saves me $1 million. That brings us down to $4 million right there. We already have spent about little over $500,000 on renovations, like demolition and different things like that. And then, of course, this came up, and right now we're halted. We're on a pause because we're like, oh, wait a second here. But the idea, if we didn't pause, which has been the last 3 weeks, we've paused, and hopefully we can, get going again shortly. Is the idea was we were going to put a total of $1.5 million of our own money in, right? That's the cash that I had set aside for it. That left my wife and me at the time, it was going to be both of us. It left us with a little bit of cash, but not a lot of cash, right? I mean, it was like kind of like, hey, this will get us through if something happens, but we're going to spend the majority of our life savings on this. And then we had a deal with the bank that was $2.5 million that they were going to loan us on the rest of the note.
So just to be clear, so 500 is in already. You have $1 million more to go of your own money, and then $2 million from the bank.
2.5 million from the bank.
2.5 million from the bank, right?
Well, that was so the downside is, this is where the trouble comes in, is that and I know we'll get into this as we get going. And by the way, I hope that during this podcast we can talk about some other things too, just some fun stuff about travel.
Oh, we will. We'll get into it. We got time.
Who I am and all that other stuff. But yeah, the problem is that, of course, so we had a letter of intent from the bank for the loan, and then the actual execution of the loan was going to happen when we got the final blueprints, which are now about 2 weeks away. But as you can imagine, the bank isn't very, banks are very enthusiastic to loaning to a terminal cancer patient. So
how do they know though? Why do they know?
Because I went public. Wow. It was a tough decision to go public with it or to keep it private. I knew going public, it would jeopardize potentially that loan.
Is it legal for them not to, though? Is that, I mean, I guess if you are public with it, they could say, "Ooh, well, if you're terminally ill, then no, we're not." Is that legal for them to do? I don't know.
I don't really know. I don't know, but there's probably another wrinkle to it that goes one step further that doesn't bother me that much, and that the loan was going to be recourse debt, right? And I, in good faith, not knowing how long I'm going to be around, didn't want to put my wife into a situation where, something went wrong. Let's say, they got 80% done with the aquarium build and reptile zoo build, and the wheels fell off because I wasn't around. Now I built a great team. I've said, like, my chief operating officer, literally ran 13 public aquariums for 6 years. He oversaw building 6 of them. So he was so we have that team. We have Aquarius. We have the filtration guys. We have, so we have a great team that can definitely achieve this without me. But my point is that, going back to what we said earlier, is that my focus is my family and my family's future. Could I rest easy in my end days, knowing that my wife has a $2.5 million recourse debt, saying that if something goes wrong, she loses the houses, she loses everything that we have? And I just can't do that, right? I can't do that. I can't put her in that position. So as a problem solver, what's the next step, right? It's like, all right, well, how do I raise $2.5 million? And that's one of the reasons why we're on this podcast. There's fundraising. Obviously part of the fundraising, might go to my audience. But you got to remember, even though I have millions of people that follow me, and everyone goes like, well, if you've got millions of people, even if everyone gave $1, 99% of people aren't going to give anything, right? Not even $1. And then there's going to be some people that give $20, some people give $50, $100, the rare $500 things. Like, it's hard to get to 2.5 million that way, but you can maybe get a little bit there. And we've considered it, and we may launch that. We're still on the fence about it.
Why?
So I know there'll be some negative backlash.
Why do you know that? Or do you assume that?
You're right. I do assume that. I don't know that. The negative backlash I fear is that, people look at me as like I'm trying to be opportunistic in a very bad situation where I'm sick and now I'm taking, like, oh, poor me, give me money type of thing. And I think that, like, I've said this, like, if I'm in someone else's shoes and a GoBundance brother or a friend or whatever, I don't think twice about writing a $50,000 check. You know what I mean? Like, not even twice. But you got to remember, the internet is a pretty scary place.
Yeah, but are those the people that there's a couple things. Thanks for watching. If you want to see this entire episode, just click or tap here. If you want to see another clip from this channel, click or tap right here.